The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret, a sterile cage for a man who'd once outrun bullets. Elias Kane, his hands trembling like leaves in a storm, clutched the thin bedsheet as if it could anchor him to a life slipping away. "Please," he rasped, voice barely a whisper. "The letter I needed." Dr. Sarah Nguyen, young enough to be his granddaughter, paused at the foot of his bed. Her clipboard felt heavier than usual, weighed down by the desperation in Elias's faded blue eyes. She'd seen countless patients beg for miracles, but this was different. This was a plea that carried the weight of decades, a wound that time hadn't healed. "Mr. Kane," she said softly, "you mentioned a letter before. Can you tell me more? Where is it?" She leaned closer, her stethoscope dangling like a pendulum, counting the seconds of his fading strength. Elias's gaze drifted to the ceiling, as if the answers were hidden in the cracked plaster. "It's not here," he murmured. "It's back there, with her." His voice cracked on the last word, and Sarah saw something flicker in his eyes: grief. Yes, but also a spark of something unbroken, something that had survived wars and years and the slow erosion of memory. 60 years ago, Elias Kane had been a soldier, a boy of 19 thrust into the chaos of a war that tore the world apart. He'd carried a rifle, a pack, and a photograph of a girl named Clara, her smile tucked into his breast pocket like a talisman. They'd met in the summer of '62, in a small town where the air smelled of honeysuckle and the future seemed possible. Clara, with her sharp wit and fearless heart, had promised to write him every day he was gone, and she had until the letters stopped. Elias closed his eyes, the memory of that silence sharper than any wound he'd taken in battle. He'd been in a foxhole, mud caked on his boots, when the last letter arrived. It was brief, too brief, and it ended with a promise. "I'll write again soon, my love. Wait for me." But soon never came. Weeks turned to months, and the war ended, but Clara's words never found him again. He'd returned home to find her gone no trace. No explanation, just a void where her laughter used to be. "Mr. Kane," Sarah's voice pulled him back. "Who is her? Maybe I can help find it." Her tone was gentle but firm, a doctor's instinct to mend what was broken, even if it was a heart and not a bone. Elias shook his head, his breath ragged. "You can't find her. But the letter, it's in the house. My old house. The one I left behind." He gave her the address, a crumbling farmhouse on the edge of town, abandoned for years. "It's in the attic, in a box with my medals. I never opened it. I couldn't." Sarah frowned. "Why not?" His eyes met hers, raw and unguarded. "Because it's the last piece of her I have. And if I read it, if it says what I fear, I'll lose her all over again." The room fell silent, save for the beep of the heart monitor. Sarah felt a pang in her chest, a mix of pity and resolve. She wasn't just a doctor. She was a fixer, someone who stitched wounds and chased answers. "I'll find it," she promised, though she wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the way Elias's hands shook, or the way his voice carried a love that had outlived everything else. That night, Sarah drove to the address Elias had given her. The farmhouse was a skeleton of its former self, boards creaking under her steps, the air thick with dust and memory. She climbed to the attic, her flashlight cutting through the dark. There, among cobwebs and forgotten relics, was a small metal box, rusted but intact. Inside were his medals, a faded photograph of a young woman with a radiant smile, and a single envelope, yellowed with age, addressed to Elias in a looping, feminine hand. Sarah held it like it was fragile as glass. She didn't open it, hat wasn't her place. But as she drove back to the hospital, the letter on the passenger seat seemed to hum with secrets, a weight far heavier than its paper and ink. Back in Elias's room, she placed the letter in his trembling hands. His eyes widened, a mix of fear and reverence. "You found it," he whispered, tracing the handwriting with a fingertip. "Clara's hand. Do you want me to stay?" Sarah asked, her voice soft. He shook his head. "No. This is between me and her." Sarah stepped out, closing the door behind her. She lingered in the hallway, her heart pounding. What was in that letter? A goodbye? A confession? A promise kept or broken? She didn't know, but she felt the weight of it, the way it tethered Elias to a past he couldn't let go. As she walked away, she heard a sob from behind the door, raw and unfiltered. It wasn't her place to know what it meant, but she hoped God, She hoped it was the kind of pain that could finally heal. Elias held the letter like it was a grenade, his fingers tracing the edges as if they could detonate his heart. The hospital room, with its sterile walls and rhythmic beeps, faded into the background. All that existed was the envelope, Clara's handwriting curling across it like a melody he'd forgotten how to sing. He hadn't opened it in 60 years. Not when he'd returned from the war, broken and hollow, to find her gone. Not when he'd built a life without her, marrying another woman, raising a son, burying both. Not even when he'd moved into the nursing home, his memories packed into boxes like relics of a war he'd never truly left. The letter had stayed sealed, a Pandora's box of what-ifs and why-nots. Now, with his body failing and time running thin, he couldn't wait any longer. His hands shook as he tore the envelope, the sound of ripping paper louder than the bombs he'd once dodged. Inside was a single sheet, folded neatly, the ink faded but legible. He unfolded it, his breath catching as Clara's words spilled across the page. My dearest Elias, I don't know if this will ever reach you. The war has taken so much our time, our promises, our future. But I need you to know I love you, always will, even if the world keeps us apart. Elias's eyes blurred with tears. Her voice, that bright, fearless voice, echoed in every word. He could see her, sitting at her kitchen table, her hair falling over her eyes as she wrote. But as he read on, the words twisted, sharp as shrapnel. I'm leaving, Elias. Not because I want to, but because I have to. There's something I can't tell you. Not yet. If you come back, if you find me, I'll explain everything. Please, don't hate me. The letter ended there. No signature, no closure. Elias's chest tightened, a sob clawing its way out. She hadn't stopped loving him. She hadn't abandoned him. But why had she left? What secret could have been so heavy that it tore them apart? He didn't notice the door creak open, didn't see the stranger until she spoke. Mr. Kane. The voice was soft, hesitant, but it carried a weight that made him look up. She was in her 50s, her dark hair streaked with gray, her eyes a piercing green that stopped his heart. She wore a nurse's badge, but it wasn't her uniform that struck him, it was her face, a ghost of Clara's, softened by time, but unmistakable. Who are you? Elias stammered, the letter slipping from his fingers. The woman stepped closer, her hands clasped tightly. My name is Anna. I think I'm your daughter. The words hit like a mortar blast. Elias stared, his mind scrambling to make sense of it. Daughter, he whispered. I don't, Clara, never. Anna's eyes filled with tears. She didn't tell you. She couldn't. When you were overseas, she found out she was pregnant. Her family, they didn't approve. They sent her away, forced her to give me up. She wrote that letter, hoping you'd find her, but she never knew if you got it. Elias's world tilted. A daughter. Clara had carried his child, and he'd never known. All those years, he'd thought she'd left him, thought she'd stopped loving him, when she'd been alone, bearing a secret too heavy for one heart. How did you find me? He asked, his voice barely audible. Anna sat beside him, her hands trembling as much as his. I've been looking for years. I found Mom Clariton years ago. She told me about you, about the letter. She passed away last year, but she never stopped hoping you'd read it. Elias's heart broke open, grief and joy colliding. Clara was gone, but she'd left him a piece of her, a piece of them. He reached for Anna's hand, his grip weak but fierce. You look like her, he whispered. Those eyes just like hers. Anna smiled through her tears. She said, I got my stubbornness from you. They sat in silence, the letter lying between them, its words no longer a mystery but a bridge. Elias felt the weight of 60 years lift, just a little. He wasn't alone anymore. Elias woke to the soft hum of the hospital, his daughter's hand still in his. Anna slept in the chair beside him, her face peaceful despite the lines etched by a life he hadn't known. The letter, now creased from his grip, lay on the blanket, its words burned into his memory. Clara's love, her secret, their child, it was too much and not enough, a lifetime's worth of truth in a single page. He stared at Anna, marveling at the miracle of her existence. She was a stranger, yet every feature, her high cheekbones, the tilt of her smile was an echo of Clara. But there was something else, something in the way she carried herself, that felt like his own. Stubbornness, she'd said. He almost smiled. Maybe she was right. Dr. Sarah Nguyen knocked softly before entering, her eyes widening at the sight of Anna. "Mr. Kane, you have a visitor?" she asked, her voice cautious but warm. Elias nodded, his throat tight. "My daughter," he said, the word foreign yet achingly right. Sarah's face softened, and she didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. The air in the room was thick with reunion, with healing. Anna stirred, blinking awake. "Sorry," she murmured, rubbing her eyes. "I didn't mean to fall asleep." "You're here," Elias said simply. "That's enough." Sarah checked his chart, her movements efficient but her gaze lingering on the letter. "You're looking stronger today, Mr. Kane. Whatever's in that letter, it's doing you good." Elias chuckled, a dry, rusty sound. "It's not the letter. It's her." He nodded toward Anna, who flushed but smiled. As Sarah left, Anna pulled her chair closer. "There's more I need to tell you," she said, her voice hesitant. "About Mom. About why she left." Elias braced himself, his heart a battlefield of hope and dread. "Tell me," he said. Anna took a deep breath. "When Mom found out she was pregnant, her family was furious. They called you a nobody, a soldier who'd probably die overseas. They sent her to a convent, told her it was for her own good. She wrote that letter before they took her away, hoping someone would mail it. But they never did." Elias's hands clenched the bedsheet. "They kept her from me," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "They stole her from me." Anna nodded, her eyes glistening. "She tried to find you after I was born, but by then, you'd moved on. She thought you'd forgotten her, started a new life. She didn't want to ruin it." "Ruin it?" Elias's voice broke. "She was my life." Anna reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn journal. This was hers. "She wrote to you, even after the war. Pages and pages, like letters she could never send. I thought maybe you'd want to read them." Elias took the journal, his fingers trembling. The leather was soft, worn by years of Clara's touch. He opened it, and her handwriting filled the pages, a lifeline to the past. "Elias, I saw a boy today who looked like you, same stubborn jaw. I wonder if our daughter has it too." The words were a knife, cutting through the years of silence. He read until his eyes burned, each entry a piece of Clara he'd thought lost forever. She'd never stopped loving him, never stopped hoping. But there was something else in the journal, a name that kept appearing: Father Michael. "Who's Father Michael?" Elias asked, his voice rough. Anna's expression shifted, a mix of surprise and unease. "He was the priest at the convent. He helped Mom when she was pregnant, kept her safe. But he's still alive. I found him last year, in a nursing home not far from here. He knows something Mom never told me." Elias's heart stuttered. Another secret? Another piece of Clara withheld? "Take me to him," he said, his voice firm despite the weakness in his body. "I need to know." Anna hesitated, glancing at the heart monitor. "You're not strong enough." "I've waited 60 years, Elias interrupted. "I'm not waiting another day." The nursing home smelled of lavender and thyme, a softer prison than the hospital, but a prison nonetheless. Elias sat in a wheelchair, Anna pushing him through the quiet halls, the journal clutched to his chest like a shield. Every creak of the wheels felt like a countdown. Each step closer to Father Michael, a step toward the truther, toward another wound. Anna had arranged the visit, her determination matching Elias's own. Dr. Sarah had protested, citing his fragile condition, but Elias had been immovable. "I've survived worse than a car ride," he'd told her, and though she'd sighed, she'd helped Anna secure a medical transport. Now, here they were, chasing the ghost of Clara's final secret. Father Michael's room was small, cluttered with books and crucifixes. The old priest sat by the window, his face lined like a map of a long life, his eyes sharp despite his frail frame. When he saw Elias, recognition flickered across his face, as if he'd been expecting this moment. "You're Elias Kane," Father Michael said, his voice steady but soft. "Clara's Elias." Elias's throat tightened. "You knew her?" The priest nodded, gesturing to a chair. Anna helped Elias sit, then stood back, her hands clasped tightly. "Clara came to me in '63, Father Michael began. Pregnant, scared, but fierce as ever. She loved you, son. Never doubt that. Then why didn't she find me?" Elias's voice was raw, a wound laid bare. "Why did she let me think she was gone?" Father Michael's eyes darkened with regret. "It wasn't her choice. Her family, they threatened to take the child away for good if she contacted you. They said you were dead, that you died in the war. She didn't believe them, not at first. But when your letters stopped, she broke. Elias's hands shook, the journal slipping to his lap. My letters stopped because I thought she'd left me. I thought she didn't want me. The priest leaned forward, his voice heavy. She wrote to you every day in that convent, even after they took Anna. I mailed some of those letters myself, but her family intercepted them. They wanted her to marry someone else, someone worthy. She refused, but it cost her everything. Elias's vision blurred, tears spilling down his cheeks. And the last letter? The one I found. Father Michael sighed. She wrote it before they sent her away. I was supposed to mail it, but her father found out. He burned the others, but I hid that one. I thought I hoped you'd find it someday. Anna stepped forward, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me this when I found you? The priest's gaze softened. I wanted to protect you, Anna. Your mother suffered enough. I didn't want her pain to become yours. Elias looked at Anna, then back at the priest. What happened to her? After the convent. She lived quietly, Father Michael said. She never married, never stopped loving you. She raised Anna as best she could from afar, through letters and visits when she was allowed. She died with your name on her lips. The room fell silent, the weight of Clara's life settling over them. Elias felt it all: grief, anger, love, and a strange, fragile peace. Clara hadn't abandoned him. She'd fought for him, for their daughter, in a world that tried to tear them apart. He reached for Anna's hand, his grip stronger than it had been in years. You're here, he said. She gave me you. Anna knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. And you gave me her. Father Michael watched them, a faint smile on his lips. Clara would be proud, he said, of both of you. As Anna wheeled Elias back to the transport, the journal still in his hands, he felt the weight of the past lift, just enough to let him breathe. He'd lost Clara, but he'd found Anna, and in her, a piece of Clara would live on. The letter, the journal, the truth, they were his now, not to haunt him, but to hold.